Okay. So yeah, what are Strata Talks? So the Strata Talks are just webinars that we do of about 1 hour of duration, in which we talk about innovation, startups, deep tech, and funding. We have done a number of previous talks in the past, especially last year. We started talking about deep tech metrics and IP, also about technology readiness levels and business readiness levels. There are two concepts that are really useful for especially to get funding from the EU. And then the last one that we did was about the European Innovation Council Pathfinder and Transition, and it was quite popular. We always put the recordings and slides online at blog.fundingtrip.com. So after this webinar, we will send a link with the recording and the slides. Okay, so basically the idea of this webinar is to talk about go-to-market and funding strategies for health tech. At Strata, we have been working in this industry for now many years. It's now our most important vertical, probably. Yeah, and so we think it will be really interesting for entrepreneurs, investors, healthcare professionals, maybe researchers as well. And we will have a quite a tight agenda. I will give a short welcome, and then we will have Angela Sandri, innovation consultant, who will talk about how to finance a medtech product. Then Aracelia Tamariz will dig deeper into innovation and IP in the medtech sector. And finally, Imma Martin, innovation consultant, will give us a presentation about road to market for medtech products. And finally, we have time, we will have a Q&A so that we can maybe share some questions or concerns or issues about medtech in general. Yeah, a short welcome and presentation about Strata. What we do at Strata is we help tech startups, especially deep tech startups, to get funding to reach the market. We work mainly with deep tech, but especially with health tech and clean tech companies. In particular, when we look at what we really do, we work with innovation funding, acquiring grants and investments for startups and spin-offs, and sometimes small and medium companies. We also help manage innovation projects for our clients. We advise about intellectual property because intellectual property is usually a very important asset in deep tech companies. We are doing more and more investor matchmaking services and valuation services. Last month, we organized an investor event that was very successful in the clean tech field, in which we had about 30 investors attending from all across Europe. And finally, we also help startups and especially startups to get to the market and to reach the market through different services. For instance, stakeholder analysis, market analysis, and we also have an internationalization service that is actually part of the business acceleration services of the European Innovation Council. Next one. Yeah, I would like also to talk a bit about fundingtrip.com. It's a portal that we have developed and we promote. It provides insights about startup funding. Today has more than 1,000 VC funds and grants registered that can be followed through the portal. It also provides a newsletter with grant opportunities for all users that are registered. And it also provides a very interesting tool for startups, especially and founders, to assess if their company is ready for funding. So yeah. I think this is a little bit about our capacities and our ability skills, and yeah, the typical areas in which we work. And that's all from my side. So I will give the floor to Angela, I think.
Thank you. Okay, so I will talk about funding strategies for health tech. Can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. So I just did this slide to understand a little bit what health tech is, because this is like an umbrella term which incorporates a very diverse range of products that like encompasses the use of technology to improve healthcare. And they include, for example, medical devices to diagnose, treat, or monitor medical conditions, software to manage patient records or provide remote care, wearable devices that can track health data, telehealth or digital health solutions, artificial intelligence, which is now increasingly being used to develop new diagnostic tools to personalize treatment plans and improve the efficiency of healthcare in general. And also, for example, biotechnology to develop new medical products. So if you are developing a tech solution that fits within this health tech umbrella, you are in the right place today. Next slide, please. Now, what are the most common sources to fund your technology development? We can divide them between capital funding and grants. For the capital funding, we have seed funding for the earlier stages and venture capital usually for the later stages. Early seed funding are, for example, angel investors, but often at the very early stages, also family and friends. To obtain seed funding, you must, of course, have a strong business plan and effectively portray the future demand for your product to angel investors. It is also essential to understand competing products and why yours can provide a transformative response to an unmet need. Now, differently from the grants that we will see later, the seed funding must be repaid. So startups will need to give up a portion of their company in exchange for capital or pay back the borrowed money with interest. And once the seed funding is secured, it is very critical to meet milestones in order to be able to seek the next financing round. When startups require more significant investment, often they seek venture capital funding, for example, in Series A rounds. VCs are typically larger, more experienced investors who look for companies that have already achieved some level of success. VCs often have also specific strategies and are highly specialized. So in this case, a founder should look for companies for VCs that are targeting specifically medtech or biotech oriented companies. At this stage, it is also very important to portray a clear strategy for market entry, which should be devised by this stage, because VCs look for high growth startups with a good chance of success. They invest in shares of the company stock and usually also receive an option to purchase additional shares at a later date. Now, very different from capital funding, grants are an attractive source of funding because they are often non-repayable. So in the case of national grants, the funding provided is often quite limited and do not support all stages of technology development, but usually focuses more on the earlier stages. So especially at the beginning of your technology development, you can support your research through national grants. But if you aim for larger funding, European grants are much more appealing because they offer higher grants and support also a wider span of technology developments, but are also highly competitive. Now, all these strategies work together. It is not about choosing capital funding versus grants, but to combine them together in the right way to achieve your goals. So if you obtain a grant, you are going to look more appealing and trustworthy to investors. If you successfully complete a granted project, you have a track record to show to your investors. Therefore, grants should be an inherent part of a health tech funding strategy, not only for the purpose of funding your technology developments, but also to attract capital funding. Next slide, please. In terms of European grants, the European Innovation Council offers three main funding programs. under the Horizon Europe, the EIC Pathfinder, Transition, and Accelerator. They cover different stages of technology development, from earlier research to preclinical R&D, and from clinical trials until the final commercialization. So basically, there's an IC grant program for each stage of technology development or technology readiness level. So European funding could potentially support the whole development of a health tech solution from basic research to market launch. Next slide, please. Starting with the EIC Pathfinder for the earliest stages of technology development, the open program can finance up to 3 million euro and fully covers the project budget. There is also a challenges program, but unfortunately in 2024, there are no challenges for the health tech projects. Now, as basic research often happens in academia, universities and research organizations can apply, as well as small, medium enterprises and startups. Here, a necessary criterion for eligibility is that the applicants must be a consortium of at least 3 entities from 3 different member or associated European countries. The program supports the early stages of technology development from TRL1 to TRL3 or 4. So in TRL1, we have the basic research when the scientific findings are reviewed and assessed and their translation into applied research has begun. So for example, potential targets or mechanisms are identified. TRL2 consists in the formulation of the technology concept. So research ideas, hypotheses, experimental designs, potential solutions are identified, developed, and also at this stage usually published after peer review. In TRL3, we have the active R&D when data collection and analysis has initiated. So for example, first hypothesis testing, target identification, evaluation of technological components, also digital components, and exploration of alternative concepts. The early proof of concept is usually tested in a laboratory environment or in a limited number of in vitro and in vivo models at this stage. And TRL4 is where the preclinical R&D actually starts. So the proof of concept and safety of a candidate, molecule, a device, or a system is demonstrated in a relevant laboratory or animal model. At these stages, we are not talking yet about GLP nor GMP studies because we are still at the preliminary stage. Also, formulation and manufacturing process development is initiated at this stage, and system components are integrated and tested regarding preliminary efficiency, reliability, but also other factors like scalability, operability, security. So the EIC Pathfinder can support the advancement from basic research to preclinical study to demonstrate the proof of concept. Next slide, please. The next is the EIC transition. The budget is slightly lower than the EIC Pathfinder, up to 2.5 million with complete funding of the project budget. The same entities that would apply to the Pathfinder can also apply to the transition, with the difference that now they can apply not only in consortia, but also as single entities. Now here, a limiting criterion for eligibility is that the transition is basically a Pathfinder follow-up program. So therefore, only applicants or partners of project funded under the Pathfinder or other selected Horizon programs can apply to the transition. This program covers intermediate technology developments going from TRL 3 or 4 to 5 or 6. And these technology developments are pivotal for the preparation to the clinical phase. TRL 5 is defined as technology validated in a relevant environment. For the health tech, it usually includes GLP preclinical studies like animal safety and toxicity studies, whose resulting data are sufficient to support the submission to the first in human or phase 1 clinical trial. In TRL5, also GMP manufacturing process and quality controls are usually identified, and systems components or architectures are validated in a relevant environment, and the classification of a medical device is established. TRL6 is then defined as technology demonstrated in a relevant environment. The definition is pretty similar to TRL5. But TRL6 is where the clinical development starts with the first in human or phase 1 clinical trial. Through the trial, the clinical testing and safety are demonstrated and, of course, should result in line with the predictions. And for digital systems, there is also usually the release of a beta version. So this transition supports the advancement from the preclinical to the clinical stage of technology development. Next slide, please. And finally, we have the EIC Accelerator for the latest stages of technology development. Here we have different funding options. You can request a grant up to 2.5 million euro to fund 70% of the budget for activities up to TRL 8 and or up to 15 million in equity to reach TRL 9. The default funding option is usually the blended finance, where you request both the grant and the equity funding. Otherwise, you can also opt for grant only or equity only. Like for the EIC Pathfinder program, the accelerator has an open program and a challenges program. And there are two challenges that are suitable for health tech projects. The first one, enabling the smart edge components, which includes the development of smart integrated technologies to enable remote patient monitoring, personalized treatment plans, and real-time analysis of medical data. And the second, monoclonal antibody-based therapeutics for new variants of emerging viruses. It funds strategic technologies to develop broad-spectrum monoclonal antibodies-based therapies to increase their efficacy, improve or simplify their administration, and accelerate their production. The maximum grant for the open and challenges programs is the same, but if your technology fits within a challenge, you could be favored by less competition than in the open program. Now, as the EIC Accelerator is a more business and market-oriented program, here only companies can apply, including small, medium enterprises, startups, and also small mid-caps. Universities and research organizations are no longer eligible for this program. However, it is interesting that the applicant can be an already established company or a company to be established in a member or associated EU country. So this gives time, for example, to academic researchers to found a spin-off or a startup and still be eligible when initiating the application process. The EIC Accelerator funds the latest stages of technology development, including the clinical trials and regulatory activities until market launch of a health tech solution. By this stage, you should have already protected your invention through patents at earlier TRLs to ensure its commercial exploitation, but you can also file more patents during the project. So we go from TRL 5 or 6, which are respectively the preparation for the clinical phase and the start of the clinical phase, to TRL 7, which consists of the phase 2 clinical trial and eventually the planning of a phase 3. And during this phase, the final product design or formulation is produced and validated in the clinical studies. TRL 8 is when the market application is submitted and approved. The manufacturing process has been validated, all quality processes are in place, and the company gets all the necessary accreditations. So until this TRL, the project is supported by the EIC Accelerator grant. The equity will instead support the final stage, TRL 9, when the solution is launched on the market. And in the case of health tech, also post-marketing studies and surveillance are included in this final TRL 9 stage. Of course, the standard TRL's definitions do not always fit every project. So for example, if you are aiming at licensing your technology, you might not perform the phase 2 or 3 clinical trial because the licensee will take care of it. So in a case like this, it is important to justify the lower TRL that you may reach during the project with a sound go-to-market strategy, in this case, a licensing strategy. Every project is different, but you shouldn't be discouraged if your project does not fit within the standard TRL progression, because there's always space for some flexibility as long as it is justified by your market strategy. And so this is it. I hope I've given an overview of how the EIC funding programs can support technology development from basic research to market launch. The take-home message is that there's a funding program for all stages of technology development, but it is important to apply for the right program and to fit within the program requirements. And to do this, you need to carefully and realistically assess your technology readiness level, which sometimes can be tricky. And importantly, you need to assess also the activities that you should perform during the project to fit within the funding program requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. So yeah, we will have questions probably at the end. Thank you so much for your presentation. And now, yeah, Aracelia will follow.
Hi, thank you. So hi, my name is Aracelia. I am a pharmaceutical chemist by training, but I specialize in IP management for life science companies. Before I even begin my presentation, I will apologize in advance. I'm just coming out of a cold, so we might have some technical difficulties along the way. I hope we will not. So today I want to discuss the importance of intellectual property in the medtech industry. I'm going to go deep into it. So IP protects the inventions and creations of companies, which are essential for developing new and innovative medical devices and treatments. Next slide, please. So why is important IP in medtech? Well, it is important for a number of reasons. So first, it helps medtech companies to protect their innovations from being copied by competitors. So these type of companies usually invest heavily in R&D to create new products, and they need to be able to recoup their investment. And the argument is that they will be less likely to reinvest in R&D if they don't have that money secured via intellectual property. Second is that IP helps medtech companies to attract investment. The reality is that many investors are more likely to invest in a medtech company if they have strong IP protection. Thirdly is that IP can help these type of companies to secure partnerships. Other companies may be interested in partnering with you if you have a strong IP protection. And fourthly is that IP can also help increase your brand value and your company value. So strong IP can help companies to build a reputation for innovation and quality, and that also can lead to have high prices of your product and also have a higher valuation of your own company. Next slide, please. So now we will understand what are the types of IP presence within the medtech space. So we have four, and let's start from the basics, from top to bottom, as seen from a medtech company. So at the bottom, you have trade secrets that protect information that is not known to the public and that gives your business a competitive advantage. For example, your manufacturing process, formulas, etc. So you don't need to apply for this type of IP, but you need to remember that it's valid as long as you keep it a secret. Next, next is in a scale, let's put it like that. You have patents. That patents are arguably the most important part of IP in medtech, and they protect your innovations such as medical devices, treatments, etc. They give a strong monopoly on the market for a certain amount of period. Then we go into the copyrights. Copyrights, they protect original works of authorship. For example, in this case, it could be software, medical device designs that you have in paper, marketing materials, your dossiers to apply for for the regulatory, etc. So everything that is, let's say, bound to software or paper, let's put it like that. And just on the top of it, we have trademarks. The trademarks are distinctive marks that identify the source of a good or a service. So, and how we can distinguish that? Well, brand names, logos, colors, etc. So that's how we distinguish goods or services. Now, as I mentioned, we will go a bit more into patents that are the most important part. So next slide. So patents are really important for medtech companies because they produce a high market barrier, because they're exclusive rights granted by a government to an inventor or a company in exchange of disclosing that invention. Something that we need to remember is that patent and patent law is law. So each country has their own laws. So each country or each region, in the case of the European Union, will give you that right. So it's not a universal right. So you need to apply for every country that you want the right to have it. So in medtech, we can have patents for inventions, for example, medical devices, diagnostic methods, drugs, software used on medical devices, and elements of everything that I just mentioned. So the patents can provide to you a source of revenue. So you can license it, you can sell it, etc. So they could give you a source of revenue. And as I mentioned before, investors really like companies that have IP patents. Now, to be eligible to have a patent, you need to meet some requirements. And as I mentioned, they depend on where you're applying to. Both, they're usually quite standard. Some names could change. For example, the European Union and the US have different terms, but in reality is that they're very, very similar in what they ask. So the first will be novelty. So your invention must be new and not be out there in the public. That's the first one, novelty. The second one is something that is called inventive step. In the US, is called non-obviousness. And this one, I would say, is the most important one. That is, your invention should not be obvious to someone that works in the field. And you need to demonstrate that it's not obvious, or it needs to have an extra step that someone would not think of it. The third point that is quite easily to pass is that you need to have industrial applicability. So your invention must be applicable in any industry. And fourth is that you have to sufficiently disclose your invention. That means that in your patent application, you must say enough that what you're saying is clearly and complete, that your invention will be can be carried by someone. So that we have a line of strategy that companies really need to take into account, because obviously you want to disclose enough that you will get a patent, but not too much that you give away all your secrets. So the disclosure is the fourth one. Sorry. And the fifth one is more of, it's not really a rule of patents, but it's more of what you cannot patent. There's certain things that you cannot patent. For example, you cannot patent treatments on the human body, scientific theories, for example, methods of making weapons. You cannot patent those. So those are the limits of what you can patent. And now that you have the patent, something that you need to take into account is that it is a right that gives you a high market barrier, but you can only have it for 20 years. So that is the trade-off of that monopoly. But in some cases, and in the health space is very common, you can extend it a little bit, for example, through supplementary protection certificates to offset the regulatory process of getting drugs approved. And also, for example, special drug designations, orphan, pediatric, etc. You can get a little bit of an extension of your rights. Next slide, please. So we have covered a little bit of what is IP, but now let's land it into a company. So the first step of protecting your IP is identify it. So this means you need to take inventory of everything that you have, inventions, confidential information, everything, and take and make a list of it. Now, once you have that will help you to develop a strategy. And to develop a strategy, firstly, you need to identify where do you want to be. So where do you want to sell your products? And you will need to note this to comply to the IP laws that each country has. Now that you know where do you want to go, you need to choose what type of protection do you want. So do you want to just save it as confidential information? Do you want to apply for a patent? Or maybe some countries have what is called small patents, or that is, I blocked, utility models. They're called utility models or design rights. So it really depends on what do you want and actually what's also available to you and the cost that it will have. So you need to choose that. Then if you're gonna file for things, for example, patents, designs, or trademarks, well, you need to actually choose those and go and file it. But something that is extremely important throughout the entire process is to maintain the confidentiality. So you need to take steps to keep your trade secrets and know-how. For example, with NDAs, have confidentiality clauses, when you sign contracts, etc. So that's really key to reining in the IP that you have. And also, lastly, but also very importantly, is to monitor your IP rights. So regularly, monitor what's out there, so you're sure that no one is infringing you, but you're not infringing anyone. And also, if someone is infringing your right, well, you will need to enforce that right, either via settlement, court, or also via the patent law route that is trying to invalidate that right. Next slide, please. So now that we're thinking about having an IP strategy, we need to face the fact that there are some challenges in trying to secure that strategy. So first, we need to see the global landscape and the regulations. So they're complex, as I mentioned, they vary from country to country. So sometimes it's difficult to make sure you have good protection in different countries and in different markets. Then the second thing is innovation really goes very quick, and that also presents challenges as companies need to be quick with their IP protection to make sure they're ahead of competitors. And then we have the additional layer that I already kind of mentioned, that is the cost of obtaining and enforcing IP rights. And for IP rights, specifically talking about patents, they can be really high, especially if you go to different countries, and especially for startups. Those bills can add really quickly. And here I would like to mention that many times entrepreneurs get the advice that you should treat patents as if there were an agile methodology. Just patent really fast and try to do this as quick as possible. But in reality is that companies do not have that budget to file or maintain a certain number of patents. So companies really need to choose when they really strategically need to file a patent. My personal rule of thumb is not to file for a patent before you have a proof of concept. So that means that something is likely to work, and then I would say go forward with to file an application. Here the exception is if you have a really extremely healthy budget, we'll go for it. When you have budget constraints, you can just file as you want, but if you do have, wait until you have a proof of concept. And then finally, you also have regulatory requirements for disclosure. So as I mentioned, it is a really fine line where you want to keep something secret and when you have to say it on paper for everyone to know. Next slide, please. And my last slide, sorry. Here's some tips to help you maintain and create a good IP strategy. So, sorry. So my first would be to maintain really detailed records of all your IP assets. So your inventions, creations, confidential information. When do you do it? Just keep everything. And that is essential for when you want to file something. But in cases of infringement or if NDAs are not maintained, so if someone divulges something under NDA, you have proof of what happened. So the second thing that I will also say it's really important is consulting IP experts that can provide really valuable expertise in navigating the complex world of IP and develop something tailored to your strategy. The third thing that kind of goes with keeping records is always using NDAs to help protect confidential information or shared with external parties. And finally is, I mentioned it before, but I want to just reiterate that regularly monitor your IP rights. That will give you a lot of information about what is happening out there. And if something is happening, you can move quickly to remedy whatever is happening. So with this, I conclude my part of the talk. I just want to remind you that IP is an extremely valuable asset to have. And if you include an IP approach early on and have a strategy in regards to IP, it will massively help you in the long run. Also, especially if you do it with the help of an IP expert. Thanks, and I will pass on to my colleague, Inma.
Thank you, Aracelia. Thank you, Angela. Next, David, please. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. To finish today's webinar, we will quickly review some important aspects in the road to market for health tech innovations. Let me first quickly introduce myself. My name is Inma Martin, and my background is in biology. I have a PhD in cancer cell biology and several years of experience in academic research. And for the past 3 years, yes, I've been working with Strata, mainly helping with projects related to health tech and innovation technologies. Next. We all know at this stage, thank you, Angela, for the thorough presentation about health tech products, that we know what a health tech product is. And with the term, we refer to an innovation that tries to give a solution to a problem or gap in the healthcare ecosystem. They come in many different forms. And just to mention a few, again, they can be technologies, devices, equipment, diagnostic tests, health information systems, and they aim to transform healthcare through earlier disease detection, less invasive procedures, or more effective treatments for a disease. Whichever category your health tech innovation falls in, we need to pay attention to different aspects that are critical in the path to market, particularly from TRL5 to TRL9. Next. That will be the focus of my part. Why this part? Because this part, that is what we normally target with the ESG accelerator, is what takes into account the market and business part of the road to market. So Angela already talked about the technology readiness level or TRL measurement system. The system was actually introduced by NASA in the 70s, and the European Commission decided to introduce it for research and innovation projects since H 2020. In health tech, the measurement system has to be particularly adapted to the particularities of the health tech innovation. In any case, it reflects the maturity of the product and its relation to the market. For a health tech product, it goes from TRL1, that would be the identification of an unmet need, to TRL10, that would be the equivalent to becoming the standard of care. But what I want you, the most important message that I want you to take from this slide is that for a health tech innovation, it is particularly critical that the clinical, regulatory and market business domain mature along with the technology, because even the best technology will not improve patient care and will not make it to clinical practice if the other three domains are not adequately completed. Next. So to progress in the regulatory domain, we must be aware of the legal and regulatory requirements of our target market. In the case of medical devices, in the EU and the US, medical device manufacturers must comply with the respective laws and regulation before a health tech product can be placed on the market. For European companies, normally the market penetration strategy in health tech companies is launching the product first in Europe and then expanding to another regions, like say, starting with the US. In Europe, we must define the classification of the device, of the medical device, according to the EU medical device regulation. This would be class 1, class 2, or class 3 medical devices according to the level of risk of the device. And it's important that we determine this classification because this will determine the clinical evidence that is needed to be able to place the product in the market. The classification will determine by which route the medical device obtains the CE mark, or what is the same, the conformity assessment route. And the thing is that before the health tech product can be sold, a conformity assessment should be carried out by a notified body. The notified body will assess if the product is technically safe and compliant, correctly documented, manufactured according to the under the right conditions. In a way, we can say that the notified body is like the gatekeeper to the EU market. This conformity assessment that the notified body will emit will be emitted after we submit a technical file, including the clinical evaluation report. Normally, before obtaining the CE mark, class 2 and class 3 medical devices that are the ones that pose more risk or higher risk to the patient, they will require a validation, as Angela mentioned, first in a first-in-human clinical trial or pilot study, and then followed by a pivotal study or class 2 clinical study. There are quite some similarities between the regulatory pathway in the EU and the US, but there are also important and significant differences. And for this, it's very important that we know first what our market penetration strategy is going to be, which geographical region we are going to start targeting, and then that we understand the particular requirements of this region. And companies quite often rely on the advice of regulatory experts in order to navigate these quite often complex regulatory requirements and regulation. And this is actually a task for which we can use part of the budget of projects like the EIC Accelerator. Finally, I would like to mention that if we want to place our health tech product on medical device in the UK market, we must comply with the UKC conformity assessment mark, which replaced the CE marking from January 2021. And since 2023, only the UKCA is accepted, no longer the CE marking. Next. So as we mentioned earlier, we also need to mature the market and the business domain along with the technology for our successful commercialization. First, we must define who our target customers are going to be, what business model we will follow, what will be our sources of revenues. We normally use the business model canvas or BMC because it's a very useful tool that helps us identify the requirements to deliver the product and the service. It gives us an overview of the business opportunity. It helps us map out important aspects in the road to market. The BMC normally contains 9 boxes or points, which you can see represented in the slide. But for today's talk, I will not review them all, as you are most likely familiarized with them. I just want to highlight the importance of the key partners, the customer relationships, and the channels for the commercialization of the health tech product. Sorry, my dog is whining. These boxes are especially relevant when placing a health tech product in the market, because they are all somehow related to the stakeholders' involvement. Next. And the thing is that for the successful market deployment in health tech, we must engage very early on with all the relevant stakeholders. And these include key opinion leaders who can promote our innovation through their influence on clinical practice, doctors who will be most likely the end users, patients who will be the beneficiaries. Sometimes they can also be customers and end users, depending on the health tech product. And very important is to engage with patients and medical associations, because they can play a super important role endorsing and recommending our innovation, and can also help in the marketing plan to help us spread the benefits of our solution and reach out to more patients. Next, please. Another important aspect in the road to market in health tech is the commercialization strategy. We need to think in whether our revenues will come from direct sales, or maybe royalty from licensing agreements, or maybe a combination of both. If we're going for direct sales, we will need to set a price that is attractive and competitive. And we can argue about this price, maybe comparing our solution with other solutions already in the market. If the product will be prescribed by the healthcare system, the reimbursement pathway is also something that we need to take into account. And actually, analyzing this pathway can also be done as a task in projects like the EIC Accelerator, and we can budget for it. We also need to think about distribution. Do we have ongoing conversations with distributors? What are the distribution costs? How do they increase the final price of the device? And last but not least, we need to design a broad marketing plan that will help us reach out to important stakeholders and spread the benefits of using our innovation, attract customers, and create market traction, which will be critical for our proper and quick market penetration. Next, please. So we are already in the market. We now need to think about scaling up. In order to scale up production, we could either expand our manufacturing facilities if we are producing our product in-house, or we maybe can rely in collaboration with manufacturing partners. In parallel, as the business grows, we need to expand the team and complement the missing skills. Hire personnel safe for production, future R&D, clinical managers, build a sales force, grow our development unit, business development unit. Whichever new roles we need to include, growing the team can also be done with funds from the EIC Accelerator. And all this growth will ultimately lead us to expand our business globally and hopefully become the global leader in whichever sector we are targeting with our solution. Next. So we've done a quick and maybe a bit simplistic overview of some important aspects to take into consideration in the road to market for health tech innovations. And I would like to comment on a few successful cases that got funds from the European, they managed to raise funds from Europe with the help of Strata. And I include here 3 of my favorite projects from the last years. Next, yes. The first one is Oxyprem, a Swiss company that raised 2.5 million euros to develop an oximeter to measure specifically the O2 levels in the blood of newborns. they got a EIC Accelerator grant. And then the second project is Life Matrix Technologies, another Swiss company, a spin-off from the BIS Zurich, that raised almost 4 million euros with a startup innovation project from the Swiss Innovation Agency. Life Matrix has developed a tissue engineering platform to create biomimetic implants for cardiovascular disease, cardiovascular implants, and they grow and regenerate with the patient. This is particularly relevant in the case of children because it avoids the need for multiple surgeries. And the final project is from a company, Stroll. This is a British company, and they got 2.5 million euros from the EIC Accelerator program as well. In this project, Angela, that I spoke before, was the lead consultant. And these guys are developing an application to be used in AR glasses to help people with Parkinson's disease and other neurological conditions improve their gait, their balance, and reduce the risk to fall. I invite you all to check their websites and learn more about their innovations because they are really, really impactful projects and they can really make a difference in health and society. And that is all from my side. Thank you all for your attention. We just would like to finish. We will take any questions you may have, and we finish with one for you. Are you ready to bring your innovation to the medtech market? Please get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Imma. Thank you, Angela and Arcelia. So I think we have 5 minutes for questions. I think your presentations were really great. I think they are very useful for anyone with the thought of bringing something new to the medtech market with all the challenges that it has, of course. But yeah, if anyone wants to make any question to Angela, Imma, Arcelia, please go ahead. There's one thing here in the chat. Okay, nothing. It's not a question.
One question, if that's okay. Maybe, well, it was from Inima's talk, but best to ask. But what are the differences between UKCA and CE? Is it basically the same thing? It's just a different body that makes the
I think they are
decision?
different bodies. Yes. Normally the Commission publishes a list of notified bodies that you can reach to. But I think that in the case of UK, there are different notified bodies. But I believe the procedure is the same. But I'm not sure. But I'm not sure.
So in a budget, for example, for an EIC accelerator. Sorry?
You should know better. You are British.
That's why I'm asking. So if in like a project budget for something like an EIC accelerator, you would have to dedicate kind of separate tasks to both? Is it kind of a similar size budget for both, or
we normally
put the UK
like we mention it to show that we are aware of the differences, but we don't make independent tasks, or we don't budget for them independently.
Mm-hmm. They could just be kind of lumped together because they're so similar, basically.
Like something generic, like regulatory pathway analysis, and then we include there normally everything, putting more emphasis in, the region where we are gonna go first.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
No problem.
Thank you, Martin. I have one question first for Angela. So you've talked about funding for health tech. It seems clear that health tech companies need a lot of funding. Which country, sorry, do you think is the most attractive now in Europe in order to, I don't know, to found and finance a medtech company?
That's a good question. So I don't honestly have an answer for that, but I think probably I would say Germany, Netherlands, or this area. probably.
Okay, thank you.
I have
To intervene there. I think, oh, maybe Inma.
no. You go ahead.
I would say that I agree with Angela, especially if you see as innovation usually works, is based on the ecosystems that they're in the countries. And I would say, for example, Germany, Netherlands, the UK have strong ecosystems and strong industry regarding that. So usually spin-offs or entrepreneurs base themselves on that. So usually if there is strong health or medtech ecosystem, you will have a lot of startups there.
My question was for Angela, and it's actually related to a project that we are currently working on. So you mentioned that, I mean, like how we evolve in the TRL from 5 to 9 shouldn't be a problem, right, for the EIC accelerator, especially if you are thinking about licensing the technology.
Yeah, that's because I already have experience also with another project where they were not reaching really TRL 8, so they were licensing the technology before the phase 2 trial, which is the example that I used. But I think in that case, the licensing strategy was really justified by the huge amount of money that the phase 2 trial was going to need. So in that case, I think we did a good job in the proposal justifying that in a way that makes clear that the company cannot reach the TRL 8 in just 2 years. That's going to happen later. But still, the technology is going to advance in a way that is kind of suitable for the EIC accelerator.
Okay, but then if you license the technology before the clinical validation, you don't really progress in the TRL, right? You cannot claim that when you get to licensing, you are in TRL 8, because it will be up to the licensee to get to TRL 6.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right about this. I think it really depends on the evaluators and how they see the
it's just better to be upfront and just say it in this way, I think. No?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, it's yes, okay.
Yeah, it's a good question, no? Because the technology readiness is still 6, but somehow you are monetizing it, no?
Yes,
yes.
Somehow you could say the business readiness level is already, it's commercial.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, maybe one question from my side for Aracelia. So what do you think about the capacity or the ability of startups to protect or to enforce patents, because they don't have, in many cases, the resources, the economic resources to enforce patents. So are they really useful? I mean, for startups?
I would say yes. So it's a reality that patents are really expensive to file and enforce. But I would say that even before you think about going to courts, you have 2 resources that are much more inexpensive. First thing is try to settle with them, make them realize that they are infringing you. Obviously, you will need a patent attorney for that, and it will cost you, but not as expensive as trial. And the second thing that many people often forget is that you have also the national patent agencies. So you can file for, it really depends if the patent has just been granted or if it has been for a long time. But you can have a petition for annulment if it's just beginning its patent life, or opposition procedures. If it's a bit later, you can have it. You can have the scope more narrow. So you have other actions that you can enforce that are not costly as just going openly in a court case.
Thank you. Anyone else wants to make final question? There's something in the chat. Yeah, we will make the slides available after the meeting. So yeah, if we don't have any more question, we will leave it there. No, thank you everyone for attending. Yeah, hope to see you in the next webinar then. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye. Bye bye.
Bye.